Welcome back to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Glad to have you back.
Yeah, we're excited to have you back. We're going to go through a couple of different things. I know that you've had a very exciting 2018 into 2019. As Carol mentioned in the open in episode 98 when we last talked to you, we were playing against the Columbus team, and we had come back from being in an 0-2 hole, and it was very exciting. We also talked to you. Definitely go back and check out episode 98 if they missed it. But it was a really one of the most listened to interviews of the entire season 3. So we knew we had to get you back on before season 4. And so first of all, I wanted to sort of pick up where we left off. What were some of your thoughts in sort of winning that Columbus series, and then obviously going on to vanquish a foe in Pittsburgh? What were some of your thoughts on those series? And overall, have you ever had a big rival that you've ever defeated in a big moment? And what was sort of some of those experiences like?
Yeah, definitely. I think those series for the Caps were huge, obviously. They've came back from being down in the series, and I think that's kind of what gave them the confidence to move forward past those two series. I think they knew that they could do it after they had come back from being so down. So I think it's important, for teams to go through that type of adversity, especially early, and kind of you get that confidence that your team can do it and you can fight back, and then you kind of just band together for the rest of the playoffs, and that showed, and that's why they won the Stanley Cup. So, in my experiences, definitely with the U.S. and Team Canada, that's our huge rival. So it's always a battle. It's always a back and forth game and series, and I think it was the same thing. We lost a bunch of games going into the Olympics against them, and we just figured out what we needed to do to beat them, and we needed to come together and just figure out how to get through that adversity and kind of overcome those previous losses, and that's kind of how we took home the gold medal.
Yeah, I mean, it was an exciting matchup for sure. I mean, the whole run was pretty incredible, but obviously that was pretty great to beat Team Canada. I know as a fan of, the Olympics in general, it's always interesting. In the Winter Olympics, Canada is always right there with Russia, and they're always difficult foes in almost every sport. So it was very exciting to see you guys be able to finally beat them in the biggest game, I'm sure, of your life. The Kuznetsov game winner, and then sort of going to the Eastern Conference Finals after so many years. I know you've been a diehard Caps fan for a long time, getting back to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what were some of your thoughts after that?
Obviously,
Yeah.
it was amazing when they were able to get past Pittsburgh. That Kuznetsov overtime goal was something extremely special, and I remember just jumping up and down and just could not believe that they finally got past Pittsburgh, and everyone's like that's all they needed to do. And I was thinking to myself, they have so much. There's still so many more games to be played. Tampa's an unbelievable team and program, and they did so well in the regular season as well. So you couldn't overlook those games, but it was such a special moment because it hadn't really ever happened, and to do that in overtime was so cool to watch. It was an unreal goal. Obviously, big assist from Ovechkin. It was just textbook.
For sure. Quickly, because I want to obviously get into the sort of the Cup game real fast also, but what were some of your thoughts on those last two games against Tampa Bay, for Holtby standing on his head and for some much maligned players like Burakovsky scoring some big-time goals and then finally making it back to the finals?
That was huge for Burakovsky, in my opinion. He's always one of those players where he can be quiet for a long period of time, and he's one of those on-the-fence players. People are like, he needs to play with really good players around him in order to be successful. And so for him to score those two huge goals, they needed that, and they needed him. It solidified, his role on the team, and that he does bring a lot to the table. And I think that was great for his confidence moving forward, and just getting different contributions from everyone, from, players like Burakovsky to Holtby in net. They needed him. He didn't start playing in the playoffs. It was Grubauer, obviously. So to see how he stepped up when they needed him after being not the starting goalie for the playoffs was cool to just see all these players kind of fight their own battles and bring, everything they overcome to the whole team. And you could see they all just kind of stuck to their role, and that's kind of what gets you past teams like Tampa you really perform in big moments when everyone is playing for one another and not just themselves.
For sure. And then obviously winning the Cup, doing it in Vegas, doing it in 5. It was a really exciting final. I know that you got to be on NBC Sports Washington a couple of times. And where were you? I know you said you were in D.C., I believe, for Game 5. How was that moment for you when we finally were able to hoist the Stanley Cup?
It was crazy. I just remember I was like, I cannot believe that this is actually happening. And my brother was in Vegas for it, actually. So I remember being extremely jealous that he, took that chance and went out there. And I was like, I know that they're going to win it in Vegas. Like, I know that they're going to. And it was just, I was really jealous of everyone who was out there. I remember, but I was just so obviously excited that they had finally won the Stanley Cup. It's kind of just like a surreal moment. I mean, obviously I, wasn't a player on the team, but as just like a lifelong fan, it's something that you can't believe, and they obviously were so deserving of it, especially after all of those years where they were supposed to win it and they were supposed to win it and then they didn't. Just to see them kind of win it when no one really expected them to just made it that much better. And I still had them in my bracket going all the way. I always do. So
nice.
I'm glad that there was, and to win against, Vegas, a brand new team. They had an incredible season being a brand new franchise. They completely exceeded expectations. So it was a really exciting series, and I'm glad that the Caps were able to make a statement and bring it home.
Yeah, for sure. And then I got one more question about this, and then I'm going to let Carol ask a question as well. And the last question in this line of questioning is about the big parade that I know that Carol was at, I was at, and you were at, and you were actually on TV for, I believe, some on Sports Washington. What was your experience like on parade day?
That was insane. I could not believe all of the people who were there and just the excitement. And I mean, DC hockey exploded this year in that area because of the Capitals, and to see everyone come together and support, and just see the rally, everything, it was really just really cool. And to be able to talk about it on television with NBC Sports Washington was obviously an incredible moment for me. And yeah, just to see, the celebration, the players, you could just tell that they were so proud, and all the fans were so proud, and it was just a really cool moment for the city and for the sport of hockey in general.
I know. I wanted that so much for Ovechkin, and I never wanted to be the franchise that held him back. I just wanted him and Nick Backstrom and a lot of these long-time, Holtby's actually been with the team for quite some time. People kind of forget that because he's still very young. But it was just incredible for all of them. Well, I'll let Carol ask a couple quick questions and take it away.
All right. How you doing tonight, Miss Skarupa?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just in here enjoying this great interview, reliving the Cap series. I guess I'll go ahead and chime in and put my 2 cents in because it was a memorable thing for me also as a lifelong Caps fan. We talked about the 0-2 start with Columbus and see the momentum swing, with the overtime goal that made it 2-1 and able for them to, go on that amazing run. We see the team now, kind of getting that form back together. They had a couple of hiccups this past week that we'll break down in the second half of the hour. But do you see that same chemistry and that same hunger coming back together with this team right now that you saw last year when they went on that impressive run?
I definitely do, yeah. I think it's always hard to tell until the playoffs start, obviously, because it's just a whole different style of hockey the NHL playoffs are. But yeah. I think it was important that they had that, kind of losing streak, I guess. It was a month or so ago, and I think that was actually extremely important for them because they had been doing so well before that, and they hadn't really experienced any obstacles or challenges or things that they needed to figure out, or like a lot of changes in the lineup. So I think times like those are really important for teams, and I think that they just got over that. Now they're kind of they had a couple of hiccups last week, as you said, but now that they're kind of getting back into their groove and they made a couple of, trades, obviously they got Hagelin, which I think is a huge pickup. I think it's all kind of coming together in the right moment. It's hard to tell, but I think timing-wise and seeing where they're at right now versus what they faced previously, they're definitely putting themselves in a good spot.
Totally agree. I also say that they're going to go back-to-back. I agree with Oshie. I've been saying that most of the season. They're going to come together and do it because they did it last year. They know what it takes. And the fact that they were able to, close out all four of the series on the road, which was an impressive feat in itself, and along with beating Pittsburgh, it was a great thing to see, and I think they can do it again. I guess I'll ask, Alex Ovechkin is one of my favorite players. Tom Wilson is my second favorite, of course, but the numbers that he puts up and the way that he plays for the amount of time that he's playing, and the physical style along with the scoring, you being a hockey athlete, and from what Robbie told me, your numbers from this past season were very impressive. So I want to take my hat off to you because those were some very impressive numbers. But to perform at that level for so long, what does it take for an athlete to be able to perform like that, you being an athlete, playing the way you are in your current situation?
Well, obviously it's, the training, the physical aspect, but I think the most important part of being able to do that for so long, for especially Ovechkin and playing at that level for as long as he has and maintaining his success, it's mostly mental, really. I think he's kind of just found this mentality that he kind of is just going to, he just goes out there and he does his thing and he doesn't really let much else get in the way. And you can tell that he enjoys it, and he's really, I think that's the biggest part, is honestly just enjoying the journey and kind of just taking it as it is. And he's kind of, obviously he's, an animal of an athlete, and he's, so obviously intense, aggressive, however, and he scores a bunch of goals. But I think you can tell that he has fun out there, and I see that when I watch him play, and that's kind of what I love to see out of players, is just them really enjoying it. Because if you're going to, overthink, overanalyze, and stress about different mistakes or a loss or something like that, it really wears on you. And you can see, he kind of, a loss that he just throws it away and it's on to the next game. And he's kind of led his team that way in the past couple of years. And I think that's really important for kind of maintaining, long-term success, and it shows.
It definitely does. Just one more quick question. With this being NHL Gender Equality Month, what has the NHL done during these times to help get the women's hockey leagues like that you're in right now, up and running and get more women involved in hockey? Because we've seen a big boost, like you mentioned, with the hockey in this area, with the Caps winning the Cup. But with what you guys did a couple of years ago, it's been a boost. So can you talk about some of that stuff that goes on?
Yeah, definitely. You've seen I've seen a huge explosion in girls hockey and the youth and on around. I'm living in Boston right now, so I kind of just see it all over here in DC for sure, and just kind of all over the country. There's so many more girls teams, so many more opportunities for girls to play hockey, and the interest level it's just at an all-time high, I think. And with the two different women's leagues going, I think that they've done really well. I think it's important in the long term, if those two leagues obviously come together to make one really strong league, like obviously the NHL on the female side. I think that would be something that would be really, really cool to see for women's hockey. But to see it at the grassroots level grow so much within the past year or two is awesome, and I'm really, really excited to see grow even more in the years to come.
I had a follow-up question to that, because I was actually going to get into that in just a few minutes myself. There's a groundswell, and I don't even know, since you're in Boston right now, if you've heard about it, but the NWHL, there's a bunch of fans who want to bring the NWHL to Washington, D.C. I don't know if you were aware of that and what your thoughts are. I know that you're from this area, or what your thoughts on expansion into this area. Yeah,
I mean, I kind of heard a couple of rumblings about it, and people have actually asked me, would you want that? How cool would that be? And obviously it would be amazing for me, being from the DC area, growing up there, to see a professional women's team come out of that area would be amazing. And I think it would do great things for, the growing of the game around there. Could only help, obviously. Excuse me, but I think yeah, obviously I would be all for it. It would be really, really cool to see.
Yeah, I'll actually maybe invite you to this group. I'm one of the founding members of the Bring NWHL to Washington, D.C. group. It's a public group. We're trying to grow it. So I would love to have you talk to some of these ladies because I know that they love the league and would love to have expansion. And I can't think of somebody better to help, than somebody who's such a big star in this area. Right now, there's only 5 teams in the league. A new team won it this year. Can you speak to how the league went overall, maybe your preparation for it, how you got to be? And I want to read off some of these statistics because I definitely wanted to piggyback off of what Carol said. You were the number 1 in points per game in the league, number 4 in total points, and number 2 in assists. You had 12 assists in 13 games, which is pretty incredible. So hats off to you. You obviously prepared well for this season. Can you talk about some of your preparation, how the season went? And I know it was a little bit of a disappointing end in the playoffs.
Yeah, it was obviously the off seasons where you kind of get going and do a lot. It's a lot of off ice training, and then we had preseason stuff like that, and then you kind of just get right into it. So it was obviously a very competitive season. Buffalo and Minnesota, any given day, like we were probably the top 3 teams, and it really came down to the wire. It could have been any one of us to bring home the cup. So it was cool to see Minnesota win it in their first year. It was really fun to play them. They had an incredible fan base. So did Buffalo, and it's very exciting for the league. And I think our team did a great job. It was a really fun season, and I think obviously there's work to be done, but overall I think we did take a step in the right direction.
Yeah, can you shed some light on, you mentioned another league, and I actually don't know as much about the other league, and has there been any talks of any sort of, alignment, adding new teams to this league, or anything like that?
Yeah, so the other league, it's the CWHL, the Canadian Women's Hockey League, and it's a lot of the Canada national team players and some of our U.S. Olympians now play in that league because it is also a very competitive league, and they've been around, I think, longer than the NWHL and have a couple more teams. They play 2 games a week instead of 1, and it's just it's a lot more travel, but it's also just an incredibly competitive league. And I think there has been some discussion of eventually bringing them together because it would just be like a super league, really, and it would probably be that much more exciting to watch for fans because it would be like U.S. versus Canada every game. And that's where we're all hoping it leads, and I think that's what some discussions have been about for the near future, hopefully.
That would be really awesome. Would you be okay to switch? Obviously, playing once a week and twice a week is very different. I mean, we cover lots of different sports. Football, is only 1 game a week. That would be really intense if it was 2. Or, hockey, they play 3 or 4, in the NHL level. Would you guys be ready for a twice a week? I mean, that's a completely different sort of schedule and grueling. And I'm sure there'd be many more games. I was looking at total number of games this season to accommodate that many teams. I'm sure the number of games would probably get close to double.
Yeah, it would be. That's kind of what we did in college. So it was more of an adjustment to kind of cut them down for us than to increase them because college we played twice every week, and in high school it was like 4 or 5 games a weekend, 3 20-minute periods, full games, and we had less lines. Obviously, that was a long time ago for me. I can't imagine doing that right now, honestly, playing 4 games in a weekend. My body would definitely deteriorate, but I think 2 would actually be perfect. Just like a doubleheader with a team, like obviously a team. You go there, you play 2 games, they come here. It would definitely make obviously the travel all worthwhile. So that would be, I think, ideal actually to have two games in 1 weekend.
I'm going to bring in our third host real quickly, AnnaK, who's a big fan of yours, and she has a question from her and her daughter. So, Anna, why don't you take the next question?
I will. Oh, it's so great, Haley, that you're on. I had a question last year and was like, oh my gosh, this is so great that you responded. So I have an 8-year-old daughter, and she's a swimmer, but she has kind of followed my footsteps in becoming a huge Caps fan and met a couple of the players. And so when I told her I was going to be talking to you tonight, she had a question, and she was wondering if there is any athlete, hockey or not, that you would like to meet.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, to be honest, I've always wanted to meet Serena Williams, the tennis player. She was always one of my favorite athletes growing up and still is. And fortunately, I actually did meet her last year after we won the Olympics. We went to, it was like a fundraising tournament at Madison Square Garden, our team, and her and Venus were playing in the tournament just for fun. And so we were able to meet them and get like a photo with them. And it was really cool because she was just so humble and she was just really funny. Honestly, it wasn't like robotic or didn't seem like,
right.
She was bothered, and she was just awesome. And I really obviously appreciated her taking the time, and she's such a powerful female athlete and just an athlete in general. And so that was really cool. That's a great question.
Yeah, I know. When she said it, I was like, oh, right, because I thought for sure she was going to ask you if you like Tom Wilson, because it's a little bit of an influence here in my house, but that's okay. But
I do, though.
It's funny that
you're a Tom Wilson fan as well.
Oh, yeah. How can you not be? But it's funny because with the Williams sisters, they're from Compton, and I have lived not far from where they were playing, and kind of when they started, it was, you had the news out there, you have the LA Times and whatever in California, and it was very much like people either really loved them and supported the dad and his competitiveness, or they were over hearing about it. And then, here we are so many, like almost 2 decades later, it's like they are fantastic athletes, and I would want my daughter to absolutely look up to them because they have they have the skill, they have, and like you said, they were humble, and that I really appreciate. So I think
they're fierce athletes. I can see how they can like deter some people with like how intense they are, but it's just what they've done for, just the landscape of female sports has been unbelievable the past however many years.
Oh, absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. And then you have Serena. Is it Serena? I think that just had the baby. And
and then came back.
Suddenly, you see a completely different side of a female athlete, and now she's a mom, and she's like, almost, oh wait, she's not just a super athlete, she's human too, and you see the softer side of her. And she just rocks. So I think that's great. But my daughter Avery was like, oh, who would she like to meet? And then I have like kind of a sort of a random question, but I would love to know, in the All-Star competition, if you had a favorite, something that in the All-Star competition that you would like to compete in, that you think you would just absolutely excel in.
In ours this past year for the NWHL, I did the shooting accuracy, and in Nashville, 2 years ago. Yeah. Okay. And 2 years ago, I did like the fastest skater, which I'm not a huge fan of because I'm probably not the fastest, to be honest. So, I enjoyed the shooting accuracy. I think one for the future, if I were to choose another one, would probably be like the trick shot. Not because I'm like super creative with breakaway moves, but I think it would just be a fun thing just to try and see what I can come up with. I think that would be my go-to for moving forward. But I did enjoy the shooting accuracy. That would probably be my first overall choice. That was a fun one.
That's awesome. Because I have I love to watch it, and whether I don't care who's playing. I don't at that time you don't kind of look at the team so much as you're just really in awe of the players, and then when you have Kendall go out and kick ass and think, oh my gosh, females are out there and kicking ass, and this is so fantastic.
Yeah, she was unbelievable.
Truly. And so I was like, if you're out there and we all think that you kick ass, like what would be that one you go up against Johnny Hockey or whatever, whomever, and
Yeah.
what would be your choice?
Yeah, that would probably be the stick handling one. That's what Johnny did. That would actually be interesting. I would like to see how it would do with that. He's won it 2 years in a row now. I actually went to school with him, so it's no surprise after watching him at BC. It's no surprise seeing how successful he is with Calgary because he's just crushing it right now. But the stick handling one would be interesting too, actually.
Yeah, I loved watching you do the shootout one at the Caps game against, I think it was the Rangers last year. We talked about that on the last podcast we were together, but you just sniped every single one of those so fast. So I definitely can understand. I mean, that's very similar to what I imagine the accuracy contest would be like. So I'm sure you'd be great at that. So,
yeah, it was actually pretty similar. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So, well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I really appreciate you joining us again. And I'm hoping in season 4, as we get towards the playoffs, maybe having you back on. I know that was really fun having you on during the playoff time. Any final things, anything that you're up to leading up to the summer, or anything that you're up to that you want to let our fans know about? I know that there's a lot of fans of yours, and any final messages you want to give to our fans?
I mean, I might be back in the DC area come playoffs, so we'll see what I'm up to in that area. Just be bopping around the hockey community there and seeing what the Caps do this year. I'm really excited.
That sounds good. Well, we really appreciate all your time, as always, and we look forward to having you on in a couple of weeks for season 4 as we get into the playoffs. But again, thank you so much, and hope that you have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you again, Robbie, for having me.